In 1879, the city of Eureka Springs was founded in Arkansas. It was a haven of natural springs which reportedly held healing properties. The news of the springs spread far, and within a year, the population rose to a staggering 15,000 residents. Among those visitors was the former governor of Arkansas and U.S. Senator Clayton Powell. Clayton, like many others, traveled to the area to utilize the hot springs and quickly realized the potential business opportunity. Clayton formed a relationship with the local railroad as a means to bring in more business to the area. The partnership was taken a step further as they sought to create a mixture of commercial and recreational traffic. Partnered with his friend Richard Kern, the two men sponsored the creation of the Eureka Springs Railroad. Clayton was determined to make the city a destination. In addition to the railroad, the men sponsored the construction of a hotel to incentivize passenger travel along the railroad. So, in 1884, they commissioned architect Isaac Taylor to build the most luxurious hotel atop a cliff that overlooked Eureka Springs. It was envisioned to be a retreat for the wealthy with lavish accommodations and breathtaking views. The duo spared no expense, and after $294,000, and 2 years later, on May 20th, 1886, the Crescent Hotel opened its doors. But not without tragedy. The Crescent Hotel was assembled out of 18-inch blocks of limestone from the White River Quarry. During the carving and construction of these blocks, a stonemason fell to his death. It is said this man, who the hotel refers to as Michael, fell into what is now room 218. Room 218 is allegedly the most active room on the property. Michael will commonly slam the doors within the room and open and close drawers. Guests have often reported an apparition appearing in the mirror. The accident didn't sway the Crescent from holding a ball to celebrate the opening, where the region's most influential and wealthiest members attended. For the next 15 years, the hotel continued to operate as a hotspot for the wealthy. But due to financial issues, the hotel was leased during the off-seasons. When tourism was at a low, the hotel became a college called the Crescent College and Conservatory for Young Women. At the time, education was not highly valued for women, and the college was considered to be one of the most exclusive boarding academies in the state. But sadly, this led to another tragic event. As the legend goes, a student of the college became pregnant by a professor. The woman was found dead on the ground below a third-floor balcony. No one knows if it was intentional or accidental. Some believe she was pushed. Regardless, the hotel believes this woman is the apparition who has a mist-like appearance. She appears in a nightgown, sometimes falling from the balcony, or just drifting between the halls. She can also be seen in the back courtyard. The college continued until 1924. The building was used for a number of business ventures that failed throughout the years. In 1930, a junior college was established, and that lasted until 1934. Then, for years, the building was just a summer hotel, which faced continued financial hardship due to a lack of tourism. Then, in 1937, the Crescent was purchased by a man named Norman Baker. Norman Baker was many things: a former vaudeville magician, a radio broadcaster, an inventor, but most notably a charlatan. Norman, who was born in 1882 in Iowa, was the 10th child of a wealthy engineer and inventor. Norman dabbled in a number of money-making ventures, such as mail-order business for dry goods and a traveling mind-reading act, but more notably, he sold himself as a healer. Norman claimed to have unlocked the cure for cancer, and he peddled his treatments thanks to his radio station, KTNT, which stood for Know the Naked Truth. The broadcast reached across the Midwest, and Norman used it along with printed brochures to promote his cure. But when the news came out that Baker was practicing medicine without a license, and his theories held no credibility in the medical world, he was ran out of Iowa. His patients continued to believe in Norman, however, and followed him to Arkansas. In 1937, Norman purchased the Crescent Hotel, creating the Baker's Cancer Curing Hospital. He continued to broadcast his treatments and pushed his brochures in the mail. He referred to the area as the Switzerland of America and promoted his hospital under a cheery banner which read, "Where sick folk get well." Norman claimed his Formula 5 could cure cancer in 3 to 6 weeks without surgery or radiation treatments. If patients were not cured within the allotted time, they could return for more treatments free of charge, except for room and board and transportation. The patient was responsible for these costs. His Formula 5 consisted of alcohol, glycerol, carbolic acid, ground watermelon seeds, corn silk, and clover leaves, a recipe he stole from another con man. In reality, it did nothing to cure the sick. It was to be administered by injection at the site of the cancer up to 7 times a day. Baker claimed his Formula 5, positive thoughts, and natural healing, which relied heavily on vegetables, herbs, and roots, could cure even the worst cases. He guaranteed cures for less dire conditions, such as hemorrhoids and varicose veins, using his same ineffectual injections. Many of what is known about the Crescent under Norman was discovered through letters written by former patients. The patients often discussed frustrations with delays in the mail and their daily regimens of castor oil, tonics, needle therapies, and diets. Many described treatments as torture due to the constant injections of this elixir, and Norman's examinations, which consisted of a lot of pinching and prodding at the patients. Patients who were suffering immensely were isolated to a wing known as the psychiatric ward. Financial strain from the treatments was a reoccurring theme as well. Norman took advantage of the sick who were desperate for answers, and they paid handsomely for it. He promised life and vigor, but sadly, many died under his care, while Norman made a lot of money. Norman was eccentric and made no attempt at hiding the money he made from the sick. He drove custom-built cars, painted in his signature color lavender, and he always wore the best 3-piece suits paired with lavender shirts. Norman's outrageous claims caught the attention of the American Medical Association, and his theories became a guide on what not to do for cancer treatments. Doctors and scientists tried to debunk his theories by posting articles, but Norman continued to practice. Many times, authorities tried to put a stop to Norman's grift, but were unsuccessful. He used his reach to not only promote his cure, but slander his enemies in mainstream medical establishments. He even accused the American Medical Association of trying to have him assassinated. But eventually, Norman would be arrested on charges, just not related to his unethical practices. Because of the brochures he constantly sent out, Norman was apprehended in September of 1939 for mail fraud. Norman served his 3-year sentence at Leavenworth Prison, and upon his release, he attempted to open another research center in Iowa, but was denied permission. He then moved to Miami, Florida for retirement. Norman developed liver cancer, and rather than undergo legitimate treatment, he went to Battle Creek Sanitarium, where he died in 1958. As many may guess, the pain and suffering endured by patients left behind many wayward souls. More than 40 people died at the hands of Norman and his hopeless therapy, and staff insist they continue to haunt the building. Specifically on the 3rd floor of the Crescent, where the hotel connects to an annex that was used as a makeshift morgue. During Norman's time, phenomenon is often reported. According to the mediums hired by the current owner, this area is said to be a portal. A portal is a dimension that holds the spirits of the dead. In this specific room, guests report faintness, temperature changes with no explanation, and passing out. Guests will also suddenly fall pale, and there has been an increase in physical touch by unseen hands. More recently, a dark and ominous figure was reported roaming around the former morgue. Other notable figures include Theodora, a cancer patient who is often seen outside of room 419, fumbling for her keys. She is said to also tidy the rooms up after guests leave for the day. Another is the hotel's in-house doctor, John Ellis, who hangs around room 212, his previous office. Guests report smelling cherry tobacco, and this is a sign that the doctor is in. And lastly, a nurse on the 3rd floor. She is seen pushing a gurney around, and sometimes the squeaking wheels are heard echoing through the halls. After Norman, the hotel underwent a transformative period of renovations and ownership. The new owners were four men: Herbert Byfield, John Constantine, Dwight Nichols, and Herbert Shutter, and their goal was to restore the Crescent to its former glory. They used vacation packages in collaboration with the Fisco Railroad, which brought a wave of tourism. But then, in 1967, a devastating fire from faulty wiring destroyed the penthouse level and a significant portion of the fourth floor. Due to the damage, many renovations were needed, and the hotel was once again left unoccupied. In 1970, the hotel transitioned to Resort Enterprises Incorporation under the sole ownership of Dwight Nichols. Then 2 years later, a group of investors under the name Crescent Heights Development bought the hotel. The property was restored and facilities expanded. It was during this time period that the first reports of supernatural occurrences surfaced. The last exchange of ownership of the Crescent occurred on February 28, 1997, when Marty and Elise Rodnick purchased the property. The couple completed their 10-year restoration project in just 5. Under their care, the Crescent secured recognition by the National Trust for Historic Preservation as one of America's distinctive destinations. Sadly, in 2009, Marty passed away in an accident, but Elise continues to run the Crescent just as the two dreamed. The Crescent has other ghostly residents, not necessarily connected to historical events. These honorable mentions include 4-year-old Brecky, the son of Richard and Mary Breckenridge. Brecky sadly fell ill during his stay at the Crescent and died from the sickness. He is reportedly seen playing in the halls with a red ball or photobombing tourists. Many unnamed spirits dressed in period clothing appear most frequently in the Crystal Dining Room, where the dancing ghosts are seen at all hours of the night. Most often, the decor in this room will be moved around, with no one in the room. The most popular and commonly seen spirit is Morris. According to hotel records, in 1973, an orange tabby cat wandered into the lobby and stayed for 21 years. The cat became known as Morris and a staple at the Crescent, with the staff jokingly referring to him as the general manager. When Morris passed away, he was buried on the hotel grounds, and a memorial was dedicated to him in the lobby. To this day, guests file complaints about a cat running through the lobby and hallways. The modern Crescent Hotel has embraced a reputation as being haunted. They've hired countless paranormal investigators to provide an explanation for why the Crescent seems to be a hotbed for activity. They believe it has to do with the foundation. The Crescent is built upon limestone, which is believed to have the ability to absorb and release electromagnetic and psychic energies. Regardless, the haunted hotel continues to bring in tourists and flourish under the title of America's Most Haunted. This only reached new heights when in 2019, a landscaper unearthed something unexpected. Behind the hotel, at the edge of the woods, was a dumping site of what was described as specimen jars. These jars were on display when visitors entered Norman's hospital. They were filled with tumors and flesh to try and make Norman and his hospital look more legitimate. The discovery was huge. They found hundreds of bottles, some broken, others in perfect condition. All were filled with some sort of liquid varying from clear in color to brown, and many held a specimen inside. Several bottles were excavated and removed for testing. Currently, the Crescent Hotel and Spa is in operation and offers nightly ghost tours. So, what do you think? Would you stay a night at the Crescent?